Hi everyone, I hope this video finds you healthy. We're going to go ahead and jump into Chapter 10, Organizational Design and Control. The organizational structure, that's really what we're going to be talking about in this chapter, is how large organizations structure themselves when they have an international component to their business. Now, as we talked about in the classroom, the real bulk of the content in this class is going to be, in almost every class, is going to be in the first 8 or 9 chapters. Once you get to double digits, once you get to Chapter 10, textbooks start to get very specific. And that's what we're getting into here, something that's very specific. If you go to work for a large multinational corporation, these might apply to you. However, if you're working with smaller businesses, local businesses that are doing something overseas, this really will have limited application. But nonetheless, it's important to understand the structure for when you go into any type of business, to understand how these things are typically done. It just broadens your general business knowledge. Okay. So some of the concerns you may have are finding the most effective way to departmentalize, to take advantage of the efficiencies gained from specialization of labor, and to coordinate activities of those departments to enable the firm to meet its overall objectives. So once again, what this is talking about is coming up with a design for your company that best leverages who you are as a company, what you're making, and how you do things. And once again, and who your personnel is and what their specialties are. So the ways you can design, and we're going to talk about all of these, so I'm just going to mention them briefly here. You can do an international division. You can set yourself up by products, by geographic regions, by functions. You can have a hybrid organization, or you can have a matrix. So we're going to cover each of those briefly. So when you set up an international division, you have your headquarters. So if you were Boeing, your headquarters is in Seattle, Washington. And then you see underneath the headquarters, you have your planes. For this particular hypothetical example, you have your planes, your trains, and your automobiles, and those are all domestic, meaning they are in this country. And then you have a completely separate division for your international business. And then under international, you break off into planes, trains, and automobiles. And actually they have, and also by country. So in your international division, you could have multiple. You can have 10 plane divisions, 14 automobile divisions, all for different countries, all under that international division. And this gives the domestic part of your company, keeps you from tying them into the international decisions. So for example, if you were making cars and you had a division, and I'll use Ford as an example, Ford has a European division. They have a division in England. So those cars are being made right-hand drive. That's completely separate from the automotive division in the US, which of course makes left-hand drive cars with stricter smog emission standards. Those two don't need to talk to each other. And for example, you don't need the European guys getting permission from the North American guys on every little design decision they make in order to make the cars workable for Europe. And they don't. They have a completely different international division, and it makes things much more efficient. So this is just really what we talked about on the last slide. So we'll keep on moving. The evolution of an international company. They use Starbucks as an example, which is a good example. They have 2 divisions, the US Starbucks and Starbucks International. And then they divided up into 3. So they found that international was just too big and too different. Just because it's not in the US doesn't mean that it's all the same. And this is something that happens as companies expand, is that you can't throw China, Asia Pacific, South America, Europe, all in the same international division and have things run smoothly. Each geographic region is substantially different, and they will all need their own divisions as you grow. Okay, so next type of division we're going to talk about is product. This is the next form of organization for international business. So here, once again, you have your headquarters, and then you have your planes, trains, and automobiles. And then you have, and then we're just going to look at, say, the trains division, but this would be similar. Planes and automobiles would have something similar to this. And then under that, you have domestic trains, so the US trains, Germany trains, India trains, Mexico trains, and so forth. So once again, you divide by product. So in this particular company, this hypothetical company, maybe in their automobiles division, they don't have multiple countries. Maybe they only make cars for the US, or they only make cars for, say, Brazil. And so when you divide by product, this is for companies that are very large and have very diverse product lines. So I would think of a company like Yamaha or Mitsubishi. A lot of Japanese companies will do things this way because under the same brand name, they have extremely diverse products. Yamaha, you can buy a keyboard or a motorcycle. Very different. And so in those cases, it makes a lot of sense to divide by product. So they give some examples here: Procter & Gamble, health, beauty, well-being, household care. This is pretty much what we talked about on the previous slide, except for that last point. It creates duplication of area experts, but it eliminates duplication of product experts. So once again, it takes advantage of your personnel and the skill sets of your personnel. All right, moving on. The product division organization. So Google is the example they're going to use. If you don't already know, the name of Google really isn't Google, it's Alphabet. And the subsidiaries, Google is a part of Alphabet. Then you also have Nest, you have Calico, Google, Figer, Ventures, Capital, and Google X. So these are all the different companies under Alphabet. And they're pretty diverse. You look at Nest. They make thermostats. That has really nothing to do with search, which is primary Google, under the brand name Google. So search and thermostats don't mix. So they've separated them, and it makes sense. Google Health, and once again, or Calico Health, that doesn't really mix with thermostats. So that's why when you have these diverse products that you like to separate them. But you can also see under internet products, you have search, YouTube, and Gmail, because those are kind of related. So to have those together makes sense. We just talked about all of this, so we'll keep moving. Geographic division. So this is when you want to divide purely by geography at the highest level. So you have your headquarters, then you have your Asia, your Americas, your Europe, your Middle East, and so forth. And then under each geographic division, you could have, for example, a trains division under each of those. Now, this is a steel company. This would make sense for consumer goods. And there is some duplication, but hopefully information is being shared. You don't actually see this one a lot, simply because it takes such a large multinational corporation. This is not something, unless you happen to work for one of these, that you're going to run across too often, because typically they are, once again, very large. Functional division. So we'll just look at this very briefly. CEO, then under that you have administration, engineering, finance, marketing, manufacturing. These are very typical functional divisions within an organization. But you don't often see organizations controlled by functionality at the top level. So for example, if we go back to this slide, if you were making planes, where would that exactly fit? Would they fit under marketing, under manufacturing, under engineering? You could see why that's not a good fit for a lot of companies. However, you will actually see a design like this, a functional division design for a college. So this is a very common method obviously you don't have engineering in college. You would have administration, athletics, student life, academics, plant ops, security, things like that. And so you will see this. A marketing might be one. A CFO, the finance guy, would be another functional division under the president of a university. So that's where you'll see something like this. You don't typically see it out in corporate America. It does say, I should say, it corrected me here. Companies that have a very narrow product line, like oil refining. All these companies do is oil. Then you can, when everybody's only making one product and the product is homogenized across all areas, then you can do this. Hybrid organization. This is when you're mixing multiple types of organizations. So you have your CEO, you have your domestic divisions, and so you can go over here to your you have your domestic division A, then you have your Pacific division for A and B. You have your worldwide product division for C, international. You could see that it's just kind of a conglomerate of a lot of the different forms of organization. And like it says here, it's often a result of regionally organized company introducing new and different product lines. So when a company decides to venture into international, sometimes it's easier, rather than restructuring the whole company, just to do a hybrid for a short period of time. Usually you move on from it and go in one of the other examples we've already been through. But when you're first venturing into something international, sometimes you'll just spin off an international, division under the existing divisions and without restructuring everything. I actually was working for a company that was doing this, and they put the whole international division under a marketing manager in the US. He was in the office next to me, and he was in charge of all international operations, and they reported to him. It was really sloppy. It didn't make sense. It wasn't a good idea, but they were just the company was just starting to reach out internationally and didn't want to spend a lot of money on a whole international division. So they spun it off through this guy. And after a couple years, they brought in a professional, a CEO type, to take over the whole international division, and he moved to an office overseas and set the whole thing up, and the marketing manager went back to his previous job. So it did work going hybrid for a while, but eventually they had to restructure the company. Okay, moving on. The last one is the matrix organization. So here, and this one's kind of clever. I've always liked this one. You have your headquarters, and then say you have your Asia division and your Plains division. So the guy who's in charge of Asia Plains is at this point here. And the guy who's in charge of America Plains is here. In Europe here. And the matrix is actually fairly easy for a lot of people to understand. And sometimes you can even have one person. Maybe you have somebody here who's in charge of all planes, and that person might be at all three of these nodes. Or maybe you have one person at two of these nodes. And this is actually a way to take advantage of very skillful managers. Because you can give them multiple locations and then, without changing your organizational structure, spin things off. So say you're starting a snowmobile division here. And so the snowmobile division would come way under here, and you could have an Asia division, Americas division, a European division. But since it's small, you may have this whole team this whole imaginary snowmobile division may only be a couple of people. But as things grow, you don't need to change your organizational structure. You hire somebody here for the Asia Snowmobile Division, the America Snowmobile Division, and the European Snowmobile Division. And then if you really grow, say America Snowmobiles really start to take off, under this guy you would have here, you could have multiple managers fall in under him. So I've always been really partial to this matrix organization. Companies that use it tend to be very, very successful. And their organizational structure is very clear. Okay. This is just a couple. We already pretty much covered this. So that is it for Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is fairly brief and straightforward. As always, please contact me with any questions you might have. I hope all of you are staying healthy and well, and good luck on the quiz this week.